Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's Mike. So we've got a lot of new friends in the school. A lot of people actually just starting this week. And I see a lot of people posting about their kids having this wonderful new step where they break their board. And then, of course, there comes the questions like, oh, what's he doing? What style of martial arts? What is he learning? So I wanted to take a moment and talk about what we're doing in class today and what it all actually means. So obviously you've got the basis of it's a skill-based program, and your child talks about learning karate. So let's talk about each class. Today, the early skills kids who are actually out there right now doing an awesome job. So you probably hear some giggles and screams from over there. They are working on their punching skill. Now, this is the one probably very easily related to this is what martial arts is. However, to us, martial arts is secondary, tertiary. It's really just the tool. Like if you had to stick two boards together, I mean, you could screw it, hammer it, nail it, glue it, clamp it. It doesn't really matter as long as those boards get stuck together. And to us, that's how martial arts works. It just happens to be our tool of choice. So what they're really working on as they're working on their punching skill is four main areas of development. There's the physical, intellectual, emotional, and social. Now, in an educational environment, we would also include language processing. We group that in our classes in with the intellectual processing. So let's talk about them. Physically, when kids are working on punching, yes, they are learning how to punch, but realistically, a 3-year-old is not going to defend themselves by punching, and in fact, probably has no concept of what self-defense means. What they're working on is taking their very gross motor skills, things like bringing the hand back and hitting. And we're refining those motions so that they are aware of how their bodies move and they can move in more efficient and safe manners. So we're teaching them the mechanics of a punch. But it's not the punch that's important. It's that understanding of how the body works. These kids are growing so quickly that their bodies change how it works almost daily. And if you've ever had to buy shoes for a child, you know how quickly that can happen. But that's just the most basic lesson. Intellectually, the kids are also working on one of our brain skills, what we call multiple simultaneous attention. And this is the child's ability to pay attention to more than one thing at a time. Now, we know from research into psychology and workplace efficiency that multitasking really is not a good thing. Nobody is good at multitasking. It may feel like you're good at multitasking because you're doing a lot of things, but if you really look at levels of productivity, accuracy, efficiency, nobody's really good at it. Now, that said, there are times when your brain needs to multitask. And one of the things that we as parents and educators can highlight is when you tell your child to do two things at once, go to your room and get your shoes. For a young child, that two-step command is about the maximum that they can hold in their head at a time. What we're working on in our punching skill by teaching them to keep the thumb on the outside, keep a good fist, keep your hands up, punch straight, keep the other hand retracted. That's a lot of steps. And by challenging them while doing an activity that's relatively simple, we help them build that brain skill, that intellectual development. Emotionally, we're helping them work on their self-regulation. There's a tactile response here when they hit that pad, and especially as the instructors engage in a little bit of edutainment and get knocked over by the 3-year-old, it's fun, it's giggly. But we also want them to remember that even though you're having fun, it's important to listen to rules. And you'll see that sometimes we don't correct the kids when they are having trouble with paying attention. And it's because it's not really their stage of development. If they could already do it, they wouldn't have to be in class or learning from you. Our goal is to get them to the point where they can have fun and still self-regulate emotionally. Socially, as they engage in the punching skill, they're also now starting to work at what is called a level of parallel play. They're engaged in the same activities as their peers. They're able to watch them, be in the same room. They don't yet want to play with them. So we're raising them from this more passive play where they just kind of watch. Now they're watching and doing, and it really helps them interact socially as they get going. As a side benefit, in the particular drill they're doing today, we're including those language skills because they're punching as they spell and say cat and dog, and they're learning how to process that language. In basic skills today, we're working on the teamwork skill. Now, teamwork is included in our development program because it's something that kids are naturally learning. They're learning about what happens when they have to share, or can they choose not to share? How do they support a teammate? How do they function as a teammate and provide support to the team? These are natural things that they're already learning, and we're enhancing it by what we're doing in class. So physically, we want them to be able to recognize that when you work with a teammate, you have to be physically engaged. You can't just stand there and tell them what to do. You have to work physically towards that common goal to share the weight. And in some drills, they will be sharing the weight of a pad or a partner. Intellectually, they're learning how each person has strengths and challenges, that not everybody is the same. That in working with a team, it's okay if I'm stronger than somebody. I don't laugh at them because they're not as strong as me, because maybe they're smarter than me. But they're not going to laugh at me because I'm not as smart, because, well, I'm stronger than them. And it's not about a power imbalance. It's about, we have a task to complete. What gaps can we fill in our skill set by including people who are different? If the whole team is the same, the whole team is going to have the same challenge. So they're learning intellectually how to work with one another. Emotionally, they're learning how to subdue their own ego, to look at their teammates as equals, to not get upset when things don't go their way or when people don't listen to how they want it. It's a lot about what we call yielding in the martial arts. It's not necessarily of giving up who I am, but it is about recognizing that, okay, my emotional needs sometimes get in the way. I need to step back sometimes so that the whole team can lift up. And of course, socially, the things that they're learning through their teamwork drills are the same tools that they will use in social environments, where they're learning how to do a group project at school, how to organize a team with a bunch of their friends to go play soccer, to learn how to have an argument with somebody without name calling. All things that perhaps some of the adults around us could probably use some help with. We want them to be really advanced in their social development. In our core skills class today, we're working on their technique skill. We say that technique is the way that you do things. So when they're working their technique skill, of course, physically, they are working on building the physical strength and stamina to be able to do these moves. They're working on building muscle memory. And muscle memory, believe it or not, is actually an intellectual skill. It's the way that your neurons in your brain are reinforced as you do a task again and again to promote very fast firing. The other thing that we're working on here is intellectually helping them maintain a lot of information in their heads, but also use their working memory. This is the part of their memory and intellect that allows them to kind of pull tidbits of information from various file cabinets in their brain and put them together quickly in new ways to address a challenge that maybe that's not been seen before. This is really important for the core skills age group because emotionally, they tend to overthink. They're very confident. And when you pose them a challenge, they'll say, that's easy, I can do that. And then they face that challenge and realize, oh, wow, this is not as easy as I thought. And they start to overthink, doubt themselves, and they lock up. And if you've ever asked a child of this age group, 7 to 9 year old, like why they did some boneheaded thing, I don't know. They don't know. They're mentally and emotionally locked up. So what we're doing is teaching them some speed of processing, and we want them to be able to take this information, not overthink it, and be okay with making mistakes, which leads us into the social aspect in that as they're up there performing, this age group tends to be very motivated by their own belief in themselves. We want them to start now encouraging others, so that later on when they become tweens, teens, they learn how to encourage one another instead of worrying about what other people are thinking. So socially, they're learning how to really build up those around them. So let's talk about the last one for today is extreme skills. They're working on their reaction skill. This is important because kids at this age group, their brain is completely rewiring. The emotional centers are being wildly affected by the levels of hormone production, by some of the chemical changes that are going on. They are very motivated by yet fearful of the opinions of their peers, and their brains are simply mush in the department that controls rational processing, decision making. That's why we often say to this group, like, good initiative, bad judgment. Like, it was a good idea for you to try to help your little brother by picking him up on top of the refrigerator to get the cookies. Bad judgment about stacking up the upside down triangles to try to do it. Their decision making just isn't there. So as we look at reaction, physically, we want them to build muscle memory. Very often people think that teens and tweens are lazy. They're not. It's biology. It's the way that their bodies are growing and they need to conserve energy. We're teaching them how to be effective yet efficient in their movement physically. Intellectually, we're really helping them make decisions at a time in their life when they are scientifically unable to make decisions. And this lasts well into their 20s. So as we're working their reaction skill, we're providing them a set of choices, both of which are probably acceptable, but one is definitely going to be the better one. And we're helping them discern which is the better, which is not, and to do it quickly. This is speed of processing, another one of our brain skills, where we are working with them to instantly come up with answers. Now, physically and intellectually, that's very easy. Emotionally and socially, this is the most challenging stages of development for 10 to 14-year-olds. So as we work at the reaction skill, what we're talking about is how to react appropriately. Instead of lashing out, they ask you if they can go hang out with their friends at the movies. You say no because it's the middle of a pandemic, and it turns into, you hate me, you never let me do anything. Very common for this age group. We want them to respond appropriately. They can still be disappointed, but emotionally, we want them to recognize that, hey, even though I'm not happy with that decision, maybe mom and dad have something better in mind for me. Socially, we want them to certainly be aware of their peers, and naturally, they are very aware of their peers. They don't want to be called out for making a mistake, for praise, for anything. So socially, by working on the reaction skill, we teach them to acknowledge that the thoughts of their peers are important, but they are not determining factors. You have to respond how you need to respond to get the results that you want. Now, you can take into consideration the thoughts and ideas of your peers, but you are ultimately the one responsible. In turn, by having really clear vision, which is another one of our skills for this age group, about what your goals are, your reactions become much easier because they will always align with your vision. And in turn, you can then become a leader by being the one who makes really good decisions within your peer groups. So this is how we tie physical, intellectual, emotional, and social into each of the skills classes. And next time you watch a class, I know for the most part, we can't have parents in the building now, but if you're watching them as they're live in their classes, keep in mind that the things that you're seeing are meant to be a tool for connecting with the kids. They are not the end result. We are not teaching karate, taekwondo, kung fu, BJJ, Krav Maga, or any other martial art. We're teaching child development. To do that, we are using basics from various martial arts. And eventually those kids will learn more and more and more of the martial arts to the point where by the time they get to elite skills, we're taking all of those skills they've built over the years and showing them how to leverage them to be amazing martial artists. So for those of you that are new, I hope that provides some information for you. If you've been around with us for a while and you've just been curious and unsure about maybe why we do some of the things that we do, this is why. On a side note, the ways that we teach these things, not just what we teach, but the ways we teach it are also steeped in child psychology and some of the educational science that's available to us now. The way that we prompt the proper behaviors, use edutainment. If you like, we can do a little series on some of the things that we do in class to work with the kids, both our expectations of their stage of development, because very often when we say, oh no, something's wrong with my kid, it's not. It's us as adults looking at them as young adults. Or if you'd like tips that you can use at home to help encourage some of the behaviors that you'd like to see, let me know. We could always do a series on that. Or if you follow me on TikTok, yeah, I know, gray hair, boomer, whatever. I'm on TikTok. If you follow me on TikTok, we're doing a series right now on some of the teaching skills that we use that you can use at home. All right, I'm going to go get ready for the next round of classes. We will see some of you guys today and the rest of you throughout the week. Have an amazing afternoon, everybody.